Today is Friday, December 5th. I'm Cindy Allen, CEO of TradeForce Multiplier, a global trade consultancy service. Welcome to Simply Trade Cindy's version. Post-Thanksgiving, we're into the holiday season. Simply Trade, it's Cindy's version, is where I take an international trade update and base it on a Taylor Swift song. This podcast is brought to you in association with the Global Training Center. And today's song is The One. I'll get into that into a moment, why I chose that song today. But first, what's happened this week in trade today? It's been quite a busy week. No big announcements, but I think everyone has seen in the trade press that Costco is the first big company that has been reported to file an IEEPA challenge in the Court of International Trade, and that is to preserve their right to have liquidation stay open while the court case moves its way through the Supreme Court. There actually are almost 50 cases that have been filed in the Court of International Trade in the same vein. However, they're the first big one to be noticed by anyone in the press or anyone in the trade press, maybe because their geopolitical positions and their love of customers, or by the customers in keeping some of their DEI initiatives. But they have definitely seen a lot of press around this. Other companies have filed, Revlon being one of them, a few others. The information is public and can be accessed on the Court of International Trade. And we continue to look at this open the floodgates. Will other large companies now want to file IEEPA challenges in the Court of International Trade to make sure that their liquidation, their entries stay open? And that's important right now because on the 15th, about the 15th, December 15th, that's a 314-day liquidation cycle from some of the first IEEPA fentanyl tariffs that were assessed. So not everyone is yet going to be impacted, but those companies who were impacted from the beginning are starting to have those conversations. The second thing is the U.S. and Korea have come to a trade agreement that has resulted in a 15% ceiling on the duties for the IEEPA. One thing that was really interesting is this is going to be retroactive to November 14th. So if you're a customs broker, you're refiling all these entries with the direction of the USTR and CBP telling us how those entries should be refiled. And if they've already passed that 10-day mark and have been submitted, then we're going to have to do post-summary corrections to update those. Also interesting, autos and auto parts were retroactive to November 1st. There were some reports of that. So if you are importing those, talk with your customs broker about how you can then go back and hopefully reclaim some duty, which would be nice if you've paid out a lot. One thing that I think is interesting that not a lot of people pay attention to, but I do because possibly my background being in the ACE environment at CBP, is there are proposed changes to the forms 7501, which is the entry summary form, and the 3461, which is the request for release, the release request. There was also a comment on the International Mail Duty Sheet. The International Mail Duty Sheet is not an actual form. It's something that CBP came up with when with the elimination of Section 321 and the mail environment having to calculate and collect the duties up front before those previously de minimis shipments came into the United States. And this was a form that was updated to include the ability for other parties to present that to CBP on a monthly basis. They've asked OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, who actually has jurisdiction over government forms, to approve that as going forward. Some of the changes in the 7501 are to list the mill and the pouring for aluminum and steel tariffs. That previously didn't have a place to be listed on the 7501, and CBP is proposing to actually put that on the form itself. And some additional information on the 3461 in that vein as well, so that CBP has visibility on a paper form to that information rather than just through data means, which I think is really interesting because when I was at CBP, there was a ruling that came out that the actual official record for the transactions was the ACE system itself, and that the 7501 and the 3461 were merely to be used in non-ABI transactions, and they didn't hold the force of law. But we still continue to see CBP requesting these forms in paper-based format or produced electronically, and certainly importers and exporters use that as a record when they're looking at the information. Although the ACE transmission contains a lot more data than actually is on the form. And that's why I always recommend that if you're an importer or a customs worker, go to the ACE portal because that has more information. But interesting that they're proposing those changes right now. Also, the original Section 301 duties that were in China have been extended. So those exclusions, good news for those importing from China and got those exclusions through the process. Those are going to be extended past their expiration date. Another big thing that happened this week is UK. Medicines, pharma ingredients, and med tech won't be sectioned to 232. We haven't seen the details of this yet, but we do think that they are coming. This is really exciting news, I think, for the UK, that they will not be subject to 232. There are a lot of pharmaceutical grade ingredients and generic drugs that come from the UK, so that should help with pricing going forward. So good news. Another thing that impacted specifically customs brokers and freight forwarders and therefore exporters and importers is the ABI and AMS, the broker interface and the manifest system used by a majority of the customs brokers and freight forwarders in the industry, CargoWise, owned by WiseTech, implemented a new pricing model over the Thanksgiving Day weekend. This has been widely reported as not being a smooth transition, not a lot of forward communication based on this, and also some concerns about the fact that this is going to increase pricing for both the freight forwarders and the importers themselves, those who are engaging the services of a freight forwarder significantly. We've seen in the reports anywhere from 10 to over 100%. This new policy looks at doing away with user-based fees and looks at a hierarchy of volume-based and passing a base tech fee on to clients who engage a freight forwarder, which kind of takes it out of the hands of the freight forwarder. So there's a lot of angst in the industry right now. It's still being implemented. Those first bills are still being reported or being generated at the freight forwarder. So we'll continue to watch this. I think it's very interesting, however, that CargoWise implemented this without a lot of forward communication. It's one of the things that they've been known for, to make changes abruptly without really communicating with the broad base of their customer. So this brings me to The One. This is Taylor Swift's song. I think there's two phrases in this song that I think are pertinent to the situation today, and that's never know, never know. You never know what's going on. But also, in my defense, I have none for never leaving well enough alone, but it would have been fun if you could have been the one. So why I look at that is, who is the one that you call? Who is the one that you call when you need advice? Who is the one that you lean on? And are you leaning on the right people? And are you listening to them? I've had a lot of calls from clients, friends, people I know in the trade about what's going to happen with IEEPA. How do we know what to do? Do we file protests? Do we file court actions like Costco has done? How do we know what's going to happen? Well, the easy answer is we don't know. This administration has been very rough to predict. As a trade individual, we can't really look at patterns. After 11 months, we're starting to see some patterns emerge here, but not any that we could really predict what's going to happen moving forward. So I want to encourage everyone, if you are an importer and you are trying to determine what your next steps are in terms of IEEPA and getting your refunds, call a trade attorney. That should be the one person that you call. You should talk over your particular circumstances. How much duty have you paid? How much duty are you at risk if you don't file a court action, or if there isn't an available means to file a protest? What does that look like? What is the cost of filing those actions? What is the cost of follow-up? Are you going to be able to recoup your costs? Or is the amount of duty that you've paid on IEEPA only going to offset the costs of taking these actions? So I think that's really important. Don't call a customs broker. They may have an opinion, just like me. I'm a consultant. I have an opinion. But my opinion is based on what I know. A lawyer's opinion is based on their practice and what has happened before, and specifically how the law will interpret things. And they are more able to tell you with greater specificity what some of the risks and benefits are of each action plan. So make sure you're calling the right. If you're looking at how do you file a customs broker, or how do you file a customs entry, your one person should be your customs broker. Call them and talk to them. If you have concerns about how they're filing Section 232 or how they're getting values or the classifications they are using, they're the proper party to have that conversation with. They should be the one person that you are calling when you're talking about how to accurately and compliantly file a customs entry. Yes, you can call a lawyer, but many times lawyers don't have the hands-on operational experience that a customs broker would. So make sure you're calling the right one. If you're talking about what your duty liability is and what your bond obligations are going to be and what your financial situation looks like, one of the entities that you should be calling is your surety company. If your customs broker has gotten your customs bond on your behalf, start there, but also ask to speak to the surety company if this is going to be an issue. Your customs broker will facilitate that. And I've worked with lots of surety companies, and I think all of them are really great. They have some great people working there who can help you walk through, okay, what does a bond liability look like? If you aren't going to get these duties back, if they're going to continue to be assessed, what does that look like in the next 12 months? And how do you adequately prepare for ensuring that you have a customs bond that's going to be sufficient for your activity moving forward? We're seeing lots and lots and lots of bond insufficiencies coming in because of the much higher duty rates. And remember, the look back period for customs for a bond calculation is 12 months. So if you paid that high 145% from China for those several months that it was in place, that's going to be used to calculate your bond amount, even though that has gone away and been lowered to some degree. And just know that the IEEPA case may take years to resolve. The Supreme Court could, make a ruling, but then push it back to the lower court to determine how those duty rates are going to be set moving forward, and or how refunds are going to happen. The lower courts may decide how that's going to happen and the parameters around that, which may go back to the Supreme Court. So we may be looking at a period of years before we actually know or get that money back in our bank accounts. So what we want to make sure is that we have a bond that's sufficient enough to continue to import effectively. And you don't want a stacking bond liability. And while I could explain that to you, it's detailed, but it does increase your amount that customs can collect from you in any 1 year, in any one bond period. So you want to look at that. And then you need to talk to your finance folks. If you're a trade professional, make sure that you're having those conversations with the trade folks with the financial folks, so that they know what the next 12 months could possibly look like. Lots of financial offices are calling our trade folks saying, when are we going to get our duty back? What does this mean? And you have to be realistic with them and possibly involve them in that conversation with your attorney so that they understand the complexities of what's happening now. Who is the one person? Because you never know what's going to happen next. Make sure you have good people on your side. We'll talk to you next week.